So this might be shocking to you, but rifles and carbines are actually easier to shoot than handguns. What's up, everybody? 32 Icon here. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing well myself. Please go ahead and like and subscribe and share if you haven't already, in good faith that I will continue bringing you great content. Oh, and I'm just another YouTube personality, so take what I say with a grain of salt and do your own research, okay? All right, so listen, newbies. That may surprise you, okay? From my experience, I have found that carbines or rifles are actually easier to shoot than handguns. All right, so let me get into the main two reasons why. Number one, ooh, this scary rifle. Oh man, so scary. So it does look scary. It does look like a lot. And for a lot of people, it can kind of be intimidating. In fact, when I first started shooting, I was okay with handguns because I was intimidated by all of this. I'm looking, I'm like, that is a lot going on. Woo, I'm intimidated. But once you do your research and educate yourself, you'll realize that it's just Legos for adults. That's all it is. So the number one reason why rifles and carbines are easier to shoot than handguns is because it has a larger body. So you're thinking, well, man, if it's larger, then it's harder to control. That is not the truth. It is actually easier with this larger body than it is with a handgun. And all of these firearms are empty, by the way. All right, something as small as this is actually harder to control. And when you get smaller subcompacts and micro firearms, those are extremely difficult because they are way smaller than the typical 16-inch rifle. All right, the number two reasons why a rifle or carbine is easier to shoot than a handgun is because a rifle has 3 points of contact, whereas a handgun only has 2. So with a rifle, you have 2 hands on the rifle. So my hand is here, my hand is also on the grip, and then I have a shoulder to balance it on, okay? So my hand is free and I can balance it. If I put my hand on the grip, I can still balance it. It's a little more difficult, but for the most part, I can balance it. And if you have a 9mm carbine or a 22, it'll be just a little bit lighter than this. This optic takes up a lot of weight as well. So overall, I have 3 points of contact, 2 hands and a shoulder and a cheek, where I can kind of push my shoulder and my cheek to stabilize it. On a handgun, you have 2 points of contact. You have the grip, okay? That's where your hand goes. And then your offhand, if you're right-handed or left-handed, what have you, it goes on the bottom portion of the frame on your firearm. So you have your grip here, you have your other hand on the other part of the grip that's exposed, and your thumb along the frame. So you only have 2 points of contact, okay? As opposed to 3 points of contact. All right, with that information, here's what you get. Number one, the rifle is easier to control. All right, because you have 3 points of contact, it will be automatically easier to control this for the most part and for most people. Whereas on the handgun, you only have 2 points of contact. So obviously there's going to be a little bit more variables with the handgun than it would be with the rifle. Number two, the rifle will typically be more accurate because of the points of contact, because you're able to put your cheek down here to stabilize it. You're going to be typically more accurate. With a handgun, if you're not as experienced, sometimes you will limp wrist. And limp wristing is basically that means you don't really have the web of your hand underneath the bore axis of the firearm, meaning, let me see, how can I explain this? You want to get the web of your hand all the way up here, so much so that there is no extra movement, meaning there's no flopping around, all right, like a fish out of water. There's none of that. You have it up here, look, almost. You have it up here, and so when the slide goes back, it goes back like this, instead of, if you have it down here, now it's flopping up and down, and you're going to be super inaccurate. So a lot of times newbies don't have their web of their hand up here. So because of that, it'll limp wrist and it'll cause malfunctions and all sorts of problems. So you don't have that with a rifle. Now, a rifle can have malfunctions, of course, but for the most part, with your 3 points of contact, your cheek here to stabilize it, there isn't a lot of slopping around, all right? Number 3, shooting a rifle builds your confidence, okay? And what I mean by that is that you can have a 22 rifle, you can have a pistol caliber carbine rifle, meaning you can have a rifle that's chambered in 9mm, 45, something like that, right? It boosts your confidence because if you can control where your shots are going, you feel like, man, okay, this might not be a bad hobby. This could be fun. And when you're accurate, of course, no one wants to miss, but when you're accurate and the more accurate you are, the more that you're building your confidence, the more that you're familiarizing yourself with the firearm, the more that you feel like, hey, this could be fun, all right? When you then go to transition over to a pistol, it's not as intimidating because you have already, in a way, conquered your fears with this scary beast. Right? Because this is so scary. You've conquered your fears with that. So now when you come over here, you're not as intimidated. You feel confident that you can actually control this because you think that it's smaller, it's more easy to manipulate. You just build an overall confidence in your manipulation of firearms. So you might think that's not a big deal, but for anyone who's new to firearms, it really is a big deal. Like, you want to be confident when you pick up a firearm. You want to know that you're able to control it, you're able to shoot it, that you're not going to be harmed by it if you follow the basic rules of firearm safety, right? You want to know that, hey, I can do this. And so when you start off with a rifle or a carbine and you've conquered this beast, then you realize that, oh, it's a handgun. You know, I got this, all right? I can do this type of thing. All right, and lastly, and there may be more, but basically for my purposes, lastly, rifles actually have lower recoil than handguns. And here's what I mean by that. Again, when I talk about using a 22 caliber or a pistol caliber carbine, it's going to have less recoil than a 223. But a 223 actually has minimum recoil in comparison to a handgun. So remember, when you're firing this, all the recoil for the most part is pushing into your shoulder. All right. If you're squared up on it and, you know, you're pushing back into your shoulder and your forearm is, you know, stabilizing it, you'll realize that that recoil is going into your shoulder. So it's really not scary. It's really not a lot once you get the position down. With a handgun, remember, if you are limp wristing it, right? Or let's just say you have the web of your hand up here, but it's not really tight enough, you'll find that the gun will flip and you will become really taken back by that. You'll be really scared because you're like, what is going on? That is recoil, okay? That energy has to transfer somewhere, okay? It has to go somewhere. So if you have a really good grip on it, then you'll find that you'll have minimum recoil because you have better recoil management. But in the beginning, that gun will probably, you know, you'll be very uncomfortable with it, especially if it's a 9mm caliber, because you will see that, wow, it's a lot of power. Even with a 22 is definitely more manageable and you definitely will not have all that recoil, but chances are when you're shooting, you want to transition over to a 9mm, especially when you start talking about self-protection and all that. So you want to make sure that you have that grip down and the recoil management down, but essentially, when we're talking about the recoil, you will have less recoil with a rifle. All right. So essentially, two reasons why I think a rifle is easier to shoot than a handgun is because number one, it is a larger body, and number two, it has 3 points of contact, 2 hands and your shoulder, whereas the handgun is smaller in nature and only have 2 points of contact. All right, so listen, I could be wrong, I could be off. Guys who have more experience than me, please chime down in the comments. For you newbies, I hope this was helpful. I hope I was able to kind of explain it in a way that makes sense to you. And that's it. That's just my experience. Also, if you haven't picked up your t-shirt already, please email me 32icon@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, 32icon. Pick up your t-shirt. All right. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys. So thank you for watching. I hope you guys are doing well. Treating one another with kindness, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Peace.